All right, let's talk about the motive. What was the motive of Charlie Kirk's shooter? There are widespread speculations now, endless speculations, in fact. But the most important thing about the motive is that whatever the motive was, being raised in this wildly pro-gun, totally MAGA family didn't prevent the shooter from ending up a shooter. And that is so critical to understand. You know, there is rampant speculation. The shooter is trans. That was the motivation. The shooter's not trans. The shooter has a trans partner. And that was the motivation. We're going to follow up on that in a moment. But the point here is, clearly the shooter hated Charlie Kirk. That we know. That we can say for sure. But in terms of the theories that are being spouted here, they are wild and completely without evidence. One, of course, is based on the idea that the shooter is a groyper. Now, if a groyper isn't a term you've heard before, groypers are like more aligned with somebody like Nick Fuentes. They're clearly on the right, but they're sort of the belief that Trump and Kirk are in some sense traitors to the right wing. You could say they are even to the right of Trump and Kirk. We don't know that that is the case at all. And so I think we should be careful about saying that that's what's going on. Another hypothesis has been, well, it's mental illness. You know, we always hear that. And to some degree, I would argue, anybody who's willing to carry out such an attack on some level is mentally ill, but that can often be a distraction. The battle that is happening in the propaganda space and on social media is that those on the left want to argue that this was a right-wing shooting. Those on the right want to argue that this was a left-wing shooting. They want to categorize it. They want to be able to check the box under the category that is most convenient to them. But every single one of these analyses that I've heard, and actually even calling it an analysis is a little bit generous, something that's been missing from this is that Trump and MAGA and Republicans in their various forms have been telling us for years that certain traits are good and godly, and they are the best environment for a kid to be brought up in. They tell us if you grow up in a Christian household, that's the best thing for kids. It's the best. But in this case, growing up in this Christian household, religious family, did not inoculate Tyler Robinson from becoming a shooter and going out and murdering someone. They tell us that growing up around guns protects people. It's better for the people that have the guns. It's better for other people in society. Growing up around guns is a good thing. And in this case, growing up in a gun nut family led to Robinson knowing how to use a rifle to kill someone from 200 feet away. And so certainly in terms of the specifics and even just in terms of the environment, the gun culture didn't keep society safer. And in fact, had he not grown up in such a family, he probably wouldn't have had the skill to hit Charlie Kirk from 200 feet away or whatever distance it was. And you can keep going with this. They tell us that growing up in a two-parent household prevents radicalization and it keeps kids out of trouble. And the problem is single parents. Yet Tyler Robinson grew up in the much lauded two-parent household. It wasn't two dads or two moms, which they tell us is worse. It was a mom and a dad. And just like that, we saw that that didn't prevent him from becoming a shooter either. And so oftentimes the right loves to pigeonhole the problem of gun violence as an issue of urban young men. That's code for black usually. When they say urban men, they're talking about black men. But Tyler Robinson is just a rural white guy, or maybe it's suburban white guy. His father was in law enforcement. We're told there is no better environment for a kid to grow up in than with a family in law enforcement. It keeps you on the straight and narrow and prevents you from becoming a criminal. Well, it didn't work. Despite growing up the son of a cop, he ended up an alleged killer. And so that's the real hypocrisy here. Every so-called safeguard that the right insists is going to keep kids on the right path, Christian upbringing, two parents, law enforcement in the family, respect for guns, all of that stuff was present in Tyler Robinson's life, and none of it mattered. For MAGA, Tyler Robinson's upbringing was really like their Camelot. Reddest state in the country, Grandma says everyone was MAGA. And so if these are the values that Republicans claim are the antidote to violence, to a life of crime, how do they explain that their model household produced the shooter? Trump even acknowledged this. How could this have happened given the right-wing upbringing? Check this out.
He's become radicalized. So many things have been learned about him so quickly. He's become totally radicalized and crazy, and it must have been traumatic because the parents are conservative people, supposed to be very nice people, living in Utah, and the father turns in the son. Boy, that's a tough deal. I actually asked somebody in the FBI, how often does that happen where, knowing even the guilt, that a father will turn in or parents will turn in the son? And he said, almost never.
So this really exposes what's been true all along. These talking points aren't really solutions. These are shields to avoid addressing the real issue. The only variable that shows up every single time is access to guns. The motives may differ, could be a personal grievance, could be ideology, could be mental health, but the common denominator is that someone angry had the tools and the training to kill somebody else. And if Robinson hadn't grown up around firearms, it's unlikely he would have had the skill to hit someone from 200 feet away. And yet, instead of confronting reality, both sides rush into the motive speculation. Can we call this a left-wing attack? Can we call it a right-wing attack? And the battle over the narrative is a distraction. The obsession with labels misses the deeper sickness here, which is that in America, if you have a grievance, you can turn it into violence because the weapons are there. And culturally, we talk about this when we talk about, oh, in Switzerland, they have so many guns. Culturally, even if you don't believe it, even if many people don't believe it, the idea of guns as a way to solve interpersonal problems is too common. So it's not about, oh, it's an urban issue. It's not about single parents. It's not about a godless household. This was a rural or suburban white kid from exactly the type of family that Republicans glorify. And still, he became a killer, allegedly. So the right is trying to spin this into a culture war sort of talking point situation. But the reality is that their perfect bubble in which the kid was raised isn't safe. So the better question isn't really what was his motive. It's why does this country make it so damn easy for any grievance, any ideology, any angry young man to become a shooter? And they never want to talk about that. Now, just one other note. There's the idea that college radicalized him. We're going to talk about that later. He did a semester online during COVID. And so by the way, not exactly at a liberal institution. So we're going to get back to the college thing. But the Camelot upbringing that every one of these MAGAs says this is the best possible thing, it ultimately produced a shooter. And if the argument is, well, the shooting came as a result of radicalization by the left, that certainly must have happened very recently. And 18, 19, 20 years of the right upbringing didn't even prevent that from happening. So either way, that's the most important takeaway. There was a time when public education meant learning math, science, history, but now we are seeing Bible verses in biology class. We're seeing 10 commandments on the wall, religious chaplains taking the place of trained counselors, and it's all funded by taxpayer money through voucher programs that are sending public dollars to private religious schools. This is part of a broader effort to inject religion into public education. I'm against that. And it often is coming at the expense of real academic standards and the well-being of the students. Now, our sponsor, the Freedom From Religion Foundation, is fighting back. FFRF defends constitutional principles, takes legal action when schools cross the line, and protects students from religious coercion in public classrooms. If you believe in facts, in protecting education, in keeping religion out of public schools, I can tell you this is an organization very much worth supporting. To get involved, go to ffrf.org/school or text David to 511-511. Message and data rates may apply. The link is in the description.